For 74 years, this face had no name. A well-dressed man found dead in an Australian beach. No identification, no cause of death, no one came forward to claim him. The only clue in his pocket, a tiny scrap of paper torn from a 12th century Persian poetry book, 2 words, Tamam Shud. In Persian, it's the end. The FBI couldn't identify him, the world's best codebreakers couldn't crack his case, amateur detectives spent decades trying. Then a professor found it in a laundromat magazine, and he spent the next 27 years of his life finding out who this man was. What he discovered at the end changed everything. December 1st, 1948, 6:30 a.m. 2 people out for an early walk on Somerton Beach near Adelaide, South Australia, noticed a man laying in the sand. He is well dressed, dark trousers, white shirt, tie, jacket. He's completely still. They assumed he is drunk or sleeping. They walked on. An hour later, another couple passes. The man has not moved. A fly lands on his face. He does not flinch. Police are called. Then they arrive. The man is dead. No sign of trauma, no wounds, no obvious cause of death, and no identification of any kind. Every label had been carefully cut from his clothing. Police began building a picture. The man was roughly 40 to 45 years old, excellent physical condition, the kind of fitness you earn, not inherit. His hand showed no sign of manual labor. His shoes were polished. They checked missing persons reports, dental records, fingerprint databases across Australia and beyond. Nothing. The toxicology report came back weeks later. The result described a level of congestion in certain organs that suggested poisoning, but no poison was ever identified. He had eaten a pasty shortly before death. That was all they could say with all certainty. A well-dressed, physically fit, unidentifiable man dead on the beach with no cause of death they could prove. And then they found the pocket. Weeks after the body was found, a pathologist re-examining the clothing discovered a hidden fob pocket sewn inside the trouser's waistband. Inside, a tiny rolled-up scrap of paper, 2 words printed in a small type, Tamam Shud. Police traces the phrase to the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century Persian poetry collection. The scrap had been torn from the final page. Weeks later, an anonymous man came forward. He said he had found a copy of the Rubaiyat discarded in the back seat of his unlocked car on November the 30th, the night before the Somerton Man was found. On the back cover of that book, a phone number and 5 lines of letters that looked like a code. WRGOABABD MLIAOI WTMTSAMS TGAB. Codebreakers from British and American intelligence studied the letters for years. The FBI analyzed them. Amateur cryptographers spent decades on them. To this day, nobody has cracked it. But before all of that, before the codebreakers, before the genealogists, before the DNA, there was a phone number and a woman who lied. The phone number on the back of the Rubaiyat led police to a young woman, 27 years old, a nursing student, living in the Adelaide suburb of Glenelg, 5 minutes walk from where the body was found. She denied knowing the man. Police took her to the taxidermist studio where a plaster cast of the Somerton Man face and bust had been made to preserve his likeness. When she saw it, she almost fainted. She recovered quickly, denied knowing him, and never spoke about it again. Her name was kept out of public records for decades. She would later be known only as Justine, a nickname she had used in a dedication inside another copy of the Rubaiyat she had once given to a naval officer. She died in 2007. She took whatever she knew to her grave. 1995, Derek Abbott is an electrical engineering professor at the University of Adelaide. He is sitting in a laundromat waiting for his washing when he picks up a magazine. Inside, an article about an unidentified dead man found on the beach in 1948. He reads it, puts it down, and goes back to his life. In 2007, 12 years later, he reads another article, The Code, The Hidden Pocket, The Woman Who Fainted. This time he doesn't put it down. Sometimes, Abbott would later say, a cold case is like an itch that you have to scratch in order to function. He had found his itch. Abbott was not a detective, he was not a genealogist, he was not a forensic scientist. He was an engineer who was very good at solving problems, and he decided to treat this one like an engineering problem. His first target identified Justine. He spent years cross-referencing nursing records, electoral rolls, and public documents to find a woman who matched the description from 1948. He eventually identified her as Jessica Ellen Thompson, known as Jo. Jo Thompson had died in 2007, 2 years before Abbott found her name. But she had a son, Robin Thompson, born in 1947, 1 year before the Somerton Man had died. Abbott looked at photographs of Robin Thompson and he looked at the plaster cast. The ears, the shape of the nose, the jawline, a rare physical trait called hypodontia, missing lateral incisors, appeared in both Robin Thompson and in the plaster cast of the Somerton Man. Abbott became increasingly certain the Somerton Man was Robin Thompson's father. Jo Thompson's secret, the man she had almost fainted to see, was the father of her child. But certainty wasn't proof. He needed DNA. The Somerton Man had been buried in West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide under plain headstone reading, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at the Somerton beach." The cemetery had covered the grave in concrete. Abbott spent years filing legal motions to exhume the body. Each one was denied. Then in 2011, SA police gave Abbott access to something else entirely, the plaster death mask. When it was made in 1949, hairs from the Somerton Man's head had accidentally become embedded in the plaster. They had been sitting there for 62 years, untouched, preserved, containing DNA. 20 people at the University of Adelaide worked on extracting it over the following years. In 2012, they got a maternal haplogroup, a partial match. Not enough. They kept working several years later, a major breakthrough. They refined the haplogroup to H4A1A1A, a rare maternal lineage found predominantly in people of European descent. Abbott called Colleen Fitzpatrick, a forensic genealogist in California who specialized in identifying unknown bodies. Together, they began building a family tree. 4,000 people. Abbott and Fitzpatrick built a family tree of 4,000 individuals, tracing the maternal haplogroup backwards and forward through generations. By March 2022, a name kept appearing near the top of the list: Carl Webb, an electrical engineer born in Melbourne 1905, died unknown. Now, remember the code in the Rubaiyat, the letters that stumped every code breaker for 74 years? Abbott had a theory he'd held quietly for years. Carl Webb liked horses. He liked betting. Those letters weren't a spy code, they were horses' names, a betting notation. And Carl Webb liked poetry. He wrote his own. Tamam Shud, the final words of a poetry book in the hidden pocket of a man who wrote his own poems. It fits, but they still needed proof. In 2021, the South Australian government finally approved the exhumption of the Somerton Man's body. In July 2022, 74 years after a well-dressed man was found dead on a beach, DNA testing confirmed it. The Somerton Man was Carl Webb, 43 years old at the time of his death, an electrical engineer from Melbourne with a broken heart who had come to Adelaide, it is believed, to find his estranged wife. Derek Abbott had his name. 27 years after reading a laundromat magazine, and then Abbott told the world the detail he had kept private for years. Rachel Egan, the granddaughter of Robin Thompson, Joe Thompson's son, the woman Abbott believed was the Somerton Man's granddaughter, was his wife. Derek Abbott had spent 27 years trying to identify a man on a beach, and the dead man may have been his own grandfather-in-law. He later said, "It's a strange thing to spend so long looking for someone and then realize the answer was sitting across from you at dinner table." The cause of Carl Webb's death had never been confirmed. We know his name, we know he came from Melbourne, we know he liked horses and poetry. We believe he came to Adelaide looking for someone who didn't want to be found. We don't know if he was poisoned. We don't know if someone helped him die. We don't know what the code means, if it was ever a code at all. And Joe Thompson, the woman who almost fainted at the sight of his face, never told anyone what she knew. Some questions survive their answers, but in a cemetery in Adelaide, a headstone that once read, "Here lies the unknown man," now has a name. And the man who put it there had been looking at that name across the dinner table for years. Every case in this channel had one thing in common: someone who refused to look away. The next one is no different, except that the detective never set out to be one. That case is already waiting for you.